Fiction Fetish, the community book club for the indoor adventurers.
I'm Bri, and my favorite Harry Potter book is Chamber of Secrets.
That's a good one. And I'm Riley, and my favorite Harry Potter book is The Order of the Phoenix.
Sorry, I have to laugh, because those two are like the least favorite out of all of them, and those are our favorites.
Really?
Yeah. Every month, we pick a book, read it, review it, and discuss it, and share those opinions on our show right here. This month, we have chosen Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, written by J.K. Rowling.
Well,
as well as other ones.
Technically, it's written by John Tiffany and Jack Thorne as well.
That's a good
director
point.
And playwright.
Yes.
I believe J.K. Rowling.
So it really should be Jack Thorne, with
Absolutely.
Conversations of J.K. Rowling and directed by John Tiffany.
Absolutely. And
let's be clear.
And the interesting things about this book is that it's not actually a book. It's a screenplay, essentially. It is a script for the workshop rendition of both Part 1 and Part 2 of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is being performed currently and actually started playing on just July 30th this year. So it just started. The published rendition that they put out is actually just the working workshop script. So it's different than the one that's actually being performed. And once the run of the show is over, they will be releasing the full finished production version scripts.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And is that going to be like the same bit where it's a hardcover and you have to spend $17 more to read it?
My theory is that they're going to release it along with a DVD of the show.
Okay, that'd be a lot better because this is kind
they're
of
going to wait until the run of the show is over. Once like the West End theater production is finished, they'll probably do a DVD and sell that, and get all the fans that don't have the money or live in the area.
Right.
We chose this obviously for topical reasons, but you and I both are very big Harry Potter fans, right?
Yeah.
We grew up in the books. It
was my identifier in high school and middle school.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were like, "Do you know Bri? She's like that Harry Potter person." And then they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I know who that is."
So yeah, this seemed like a natural choice for like the very first book of our book club. So yeah, we're here to talk about and share it with all of you.
Did you go on to MuggleNet.com? Like, was
that
a Harry Potter site you went to?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I went on that site every day for many, many years.
I also remember when Pottermore was like invite only.
Yeah,
and you had
that's
to,
right.
You had to they invited you in waves, and you had to sign up to be a part of it, and then they would be like they'd maybe let you in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a whole thing.
I remember when that was a thing. That was actually when I was like, okay. Like, I was on the end of my obsession with Harry Potter. Like, now it's just like a love, but it was like an obsession.
And as hipstery as it sounds, we both loved it before the movies were out.
Absolutely. Actually, no, not for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got into it. I read the second book before the second movie came out, but the trailers were out when I was watching it. Or reading it, I apologize.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the first one and I started reading it, but it didn't catch my interest until the movies came out because I didn't like reading at that time. So this wasn't like a thing. Harry Potter got me into reading.
I was just about to ask.
Yeah.
So yeah, would you say then that, because an interesting conversation to have about this is that Harry Potter is now officially multi-platform.
Yeah.
That before it was books and there were the movies.
Yeah.
And then there were the internet kind of came along. And so we got the Harry Potter Puppet Pals and a very Harry Potter musical.
Oh, a very Potter musical.
We got fan fiction, and the internet kind of took a hold of it.
Yeah.
We have bands entirely surrounding this.
Yeah, Harry and the Potters.
You and I both, with our significant others, went to see a Severus Snape impersonator?
Yeah, like he's a professor
at our local university.
A professor who dresses up like Severus Snape and then travels around and does lectures and sermons about Harry Potter as Severus Snape.
And is Alan Rickman
like he's
Snape.
Really good.
It's freaky and it's cool. And but now Harry Potter is a play.
Yeah.
And it's an official play. Yeah. It is a branded, if you look on the book, there's a little like icon that says like J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World. And like in the credits it says like a Harry Potter production play.
Yeah,
like,
which I want to go into about like the labeling of this book and how people are taking it.
But this is now, Harry Potter has now a theme park.
Yeah.
And it's a play, and it's movies, and it's books, and Harry Potter has...
And we've both been to Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
We've both been to Wizarding World. Two different versions.
Yeah, you went to the California one, and I went to the Florida one.
And so this is an interesting point in the history of Harry Potter because we're now stretching into unknown territory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to discuss that unknown territory.
As always, please join us in on the conversation online via our Goodreads group. The link is in our description box as well as on the screen right now. If you guys have Goodreads.
So at the end, we'll give it a score.
Okay.
And because we're on Goodreads, we're gonna give it a Goodreads score.
Okay. I have to look at what I gave it. I remember now.
But let's just talk about. Let's go through it in a chronological order. Yeah.
Sure.
Let's talk about first impressions. Before you even picked up the book, what were your expectations?
I was not looking forward to this book at all.
And why?
Because I thought it was just a cash cow. Like, I was like, we already have all the books were made and into movies, and then the movie was divided into two parts, which I always hate in any franchise. I think it's unnecessary.
Lord of the Rings: Return of the King Part 1 and Part 2.
Like, oh gosh, that would have been so bad. Anyway, and so when they were like, oh, it's a play, I'm like, that's a cool idea to make like just another story increment into a play, because I know J.K. Rowling was like, I don't want to write books anymore. Like, she just wanted to do something different with the Harry Potter world.
Absolutely.
And so I was like, that's cool. But then when they were like, oh, now we're going to sell the script to you, like, so that way it's another book, quote unquote, in the series, I was just like, what? This just seems like a way to get money. And it wasn't, yeah. My love for Harry Potter, again, it's not an obsession the way it once was. If this came out during high school, I would be all over it.
Okay. Well, I had a completely opposite reaction then. I love Harry Potter, and the more of it I get, the happier I am. J.K. Rowling's writings that she's been putting out in Pottermore are my favorite things, because I love just learning more about this world that she's created. She's a fantastic world builder, and I love the stories and the characters and the worlds and the history and the rules of the magic that she's created. And so getting to see more of that, I'm totally okay with. Also, I have a very strong theater background, and I've read plays before, like, for fun, without ever seeing the productions, and so this, to me, when I found out it was just like basically the script, I was actually excited by that, because, as you know, and as we're going to tell our readers, our listeners, I read the entirety of Harry Potter to my girlfriend out loud. And she had never read the books, and I kept telling her, oh, you need to read Harry Potter. Harry Potter's fantastic. And her argument was, well, I'm not that big of a reader. And so I said, well, I will read it to you. So I read all 7 books out loud to her
with
over the course of the
different
summer.
character voices.
Oh yeah, did all the character voices, did all the accents, and and it was such an incredibly bonding experience for us. It was when we were kind of first dating, and, it allowed me to kind of show my goofy, fun acting self, and we got to, every time we'd finish a chapter, we'd stop and talk about it. And, it was a chance for me to kind of once again explore this world with somebody who had never seen it before, and that was a really cool experience. And so this was going to be the very first time that we are both going to experience something about Harry Potter for the very first time together.
Yeah.
We were both cursed child virgins, and so getting to take that experience and enjoy it together was going to be something that I was, and she was, very excited about. So going into this, I was pumped. I had been following the play on social media, the Twitter accounts, I was excited about the announcements of the actors and who was playing who, and seeing the costumes and the sets, and I wanted to see the play, but if I couldn't. So this was my chance to get as close to the story as possible. So I was very excited about it.
That's so funny. You're on Pottermore a lot then, because you keep talking about it. I get like the newsletter thing in the email, so every time a new Pottermore thing comes out, I know about it. Nice.
But I only read the stuff written by J.K. Rowling. There's a lot of articles and stuff on there that are written by their like staff writers that are like top 10 coolest ways to travel in the wizarding world, and it's like just like it's a BuzzFeed article essentially.
Yeah. That's so funny.
But she's written like character profiles.
Yeah, I've heard about those.
There's a Dolores Umbridge one that's just fantastic. A Lupin and Tonks one that's great. There's just really cool insights into characters that very well already. They don't need this extra development, but it's just really cool to see more into these characters that you love or hate and want to know more about them, what makes them tick,
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And you and I, you will agree with me on this. J.K. Rowling has a very specific style. The way she writes is very distinct. You can tell a J.K. Rowling novel just from reading it.
Because Harry Potter's in the title. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, it's just
Totally
it's the
joking.
way they speak. It's the way she writes things like Harry stops and thinks. There's moments and stuff that you can just you feel the J.K. Rowling in it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So then let's move forward a little bit more chronologically. We're reading the book.
Yeah.
Because it's a script.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say screenplay, because screenplay directly relates to
Movies.
a film.
Yeah, and it's definitely not. It's definitely like a play script.
Absolutely. It's a yeah. Was the reading experience distracting? Was it different? What was the reading experience like for you?
Well, obviously it was different because the format's completely different. You're not reading paragraphs, you're reading dialogue only.
And yeah, there's very little description.
Right.
And most description is lighting design, sound design, set movements, and character motivations.
Yeah.
There's lines like Draco is moved or Harry is shocked. There's
which actually
stage
kind of
directions.
surprised me as an actor. Like usually that's not in the script and it happened a lot where it was written that a character was moved. They're like, Harry Potter was moved by this. And I was like, that's so strange, because usually there's not acting directions in a script.
I think it depends on the playwright, but you're absolutely right. 9 times out of 10, character motivation is usually provided by the director and the cast.
Yeah.
The script is purely Billy exits stage left, and
exactly.
it's less of Billy is emotionally distraught. You infer most of that.
And they described
from
a
the
lot of the special effects, which was cool.
Exactly. And also, I want to talk about stage productions a little bit, but just briefly here. Holy crap! How do they do some of this stuff?
I know. I actually looked up on YouTube to see if someone had videoed it, or filmed it illegally. But
there's some behind the scenes stuff
able.
that the play has officially put out through social media.
Yeah.
But they do not explain, because there's stuff like
The Polyjuice post-it is what got me. I'm like, how do you see someone transform into another person on stage? That blew my mind.
Right, and in case you guys don't know, there will be spoilers. Only listen to this if you've already read the book.
This is an in-depth discussion of the book.
For example, very end of the book,
yes.
Harry Potter is transfigured by magic into Lord Voldemort.
Yes.
And then slowly transfigures back into Harry piece by piece.
Yeah, because they talk about the nose thing, and I was like, how do they do that?
Right. Also, there's simple stuff like they use wands and jets of light come out of the wands.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, that's just lightning design.
Yeah.
But then there's stuff like Dementors floating above characters and sucking the golden silvery light from their souls.
Yeah.
Or characters who are hit by a spell and immediately wrapped in golden, brilliant, blinding cords.
Right.
Or hedges that but and disappear. A bookcase that is alive.
Yeah, and sucking them in. A
train that's moving and people are on top of it, but then a minute ago they were inside of it. Yeah, the tech work, and somebody who was very involved in technical theater more than the on the stage stuff, it was flabbergasting trying to figure out how the hell they pull this off.
Yeah, so to go back to your original question, it was very different in that it was a script and you're reading these directions. And when I was reading it, I constantly imagined it on a stage versus a movie in my head. The way you would, the Harry Potter series. It was always, since the movies were out with the series, I was like, okay, so how are they going to do this in the movie? And you picture it like a movie in the world. Versus this one, I always, just about always, except the Hogwarts train and some other bits where
it just seemed impossible.
It was impossible. So I just I put myself in the world, automatically. But most of the time I pictured it on a stage, which was kind of weird.
Yeah,
I was drawn in. That didn't bother me at all. And no. I don't read theater plays like you do. This is probably the first one that I've read cover to cover. We were supposed to read Romeo and Juliet. I did not. That kind of situation.
Right.
I read it cover to cover, and it was really enthralling. And I was sucked in back to this world, back to my high school obsession.
Yeah, and it's that's a very good point. Because I had the exact same experience. I read it. And in my head, I kept imagining a stage production.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to Elizabeth a lot about this, but I think she feels the same.
Yeah.
That it was very much, I was acting it out.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I noticed this about this, and Elizabeth, my girlfriend, noticed the same thing, that I acted more when I was reading this. That when I was reading Harry Potter, the book series, I was just reading it and doing voices and stuff.
Right.
But there are some incredibly emotional moments in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Elizabeth will be upset with me by saying this, but Elizabeth was crying.
Aww.
At two important parts in this book series. And one being when Harry and his friends are watching James and Lily die.
Gosh, that was rough.
And I was getting goosebumps and chills, and I'm trying to read it and do the voices and act the parts. And I'm reading the book, and I kind of glance up, and Elizabeth is just, and I definitely was putting more heart into it. I was definitely trying to act it more because when I was reading it, it felt like it deserved to be acted, if that makes sense.
No, definitely.
But yeah, no, it you're right. It felt like a play. It felt like I was reading a play. It felt like I was watching a play.
Yeah.
I felt like I was acting in a play when I was reading it out loud.
Yeah.
But that didn't bring me out of it.
No, and it's kind of, because it did bring me out of it in the point where when it did come to the magic and the effects, I was like, how are they gonna do that? But it never was distracting or frustrating or
it just made me want to see the play.
It did. I really want to see it now because I'm like, how do they do those things?
Yeah, I'm sure after the run is through and over, there's going to be so much public outcry for a DVD copy of it that I will not be surprised. Because film versions of plays happens all the time.
Right.
You know, very successful theater productions. You can get DVDs of the show. So,
I hope they do. Like, when you mentioned earlier, I was like, oh, I'd pay money for that. Sure. I wouldn't want to pay money for another script that was, like, finalized. I would want to pay money for, like, a DVD.
Where there's 12 differences, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, gee, I'm so glad I spent my my Barnes & Noble gift card on this. So I bring up the polarizing just because I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to MuggleCast, which is the podcast of MuggleNet. Again, the website I visited every day for years. And I was like, I'm sure they're doing a review, because even though they don't do it as frequently as they used to, they do like a podcast like once a month. And sure enough, there's like a review of the play, actually, because the guy, Andrew Sims, was able to go to the premiere like before all this. Yeah, so it's an older episode. So he was able to go. And he comes like straight out, and it's just like, the effects are great, the acting is good, but the plot, like, no. And I was like, oh, no, I don't feel this way at all.
And I'm hearing that a lot.
Yeah, so there's some major points in the plot that we can discuss that people are mad about.
So yeah, let's instead of talking about the things that we like, let's go through what we've seen on the internet of people, their complaints.
Yes.
Per se. And then let's address them. So the biggest complaint that I've heard is how a lot of people are saying that it's as if it's a fan fiction of Harry Potter.
Yes, I have heard that
and
as
that
well.
there are a lot of elements throughout the story that are stereotypical fan fiction elements.
Correct.
The most jarring of which for most people, and we can discuss about whether it's jarring for us, is the fact that Voldemort had a child with Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are very upset about this.
Yeah, a lot of people are really upset, and I don't know why I'm laughing. But I mean, because it does sound
sound like a fan
but
fiction
I totally
thing.
Bought it when I was reading it.
Absolutely. And here's my thing. I pictured it as not I'm Voldemort, and I love Bellatrix, and she's so hot and hussy,
absolutely
and I
not.
want to put my dick in that. I thought of it as, I am Voldemort, and I am powerful. Imagine how powerful I'd be if I had a little version of me by my side to take over the wizarding world. Because he's all about pure blood legacy and continuing the family line and the past of Salazar Slytherin. So why wouldn't he manipulate and use someone in a very Joker and Harley type way? Because I always imagine Voldemort and Bellatrix as Joker and Harley. Joker doesn't really love Harley.
Not at all. Well, at least that I've seen.
Joker's manipulative, and he uses Harley, and Harley will do anything for him.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't give a rat's ass about her. And I've pictured it in that way. Voldemort's like, oh, well then, I'll use Bellatrix, and then that child can rule by my side.
Absolutely.
In a very king and their bloodline kind of way. And so I didn't imagine it in any sort of like completely impossible notion that Voldemort would do this.
Yeah.
Because I think also reproduction is very separate from love. And as we know, Voldemort can't feel love. Because he's the product of a marriage that was consummated by a love potion. And so he did it not out of love or infatuation or even like a sexual horniness. It was I want another one of me.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and plus, isn't it kind of like the real world like way to do a Horcrux, or like to separate your soul? You're pretty much doing that like in the real world.
You're putting a piece of you in another thing.
Yeah, and that way you're alive forever. I mean, people talk about that all the time, where they have kids to be immortal, like carry the family
isn't
line.
that constant joke about the dads that have their sons try out for football and the moms who have their girls try out for cheerleading? They're living their life through them.
Exactly. I mean.
And this is the epitome.
Yeah, like this guy wants to rule. He wants to be immortal. I mean,
Voldemort's projecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I had no problem with it. I fully accepted it.
The only thing that was weird is because they kept harping on this theory that someone went back in time in order to make this happen. However, really, it happened during the original timeline. Which it
just happened without anyone knowing.
Yeah, which threw me off because...
It happened around book 6, I believe?
There's actually a whole theory on Reddit that I'm trying to pull up, but I can't remember the username. I'll have to go to the other computer. But it's very interesting because this person totally called what was going to happen before the play and book came out.
Interesting.
Yeah. But anyway,
well,
so that
Elizabeth
threw me off because I was like, wait, so who went back in time? And I was like, oh, wait, this was supposed to happen like while I was reading book 6. That doesn't, I was like, whoa, what? But I was like, whatever, carry on. It's magic, whatever.
Absolutely. I just want to say something that Elizabeth and I said.
Sure.
About the time when the first time turner was used, and they went back in time for the very first time, and they came back. Elizabeth and I both said, this is a Doctor Who episode of Harry Potter. And we love it. Yeah. And I have no problem with that because we love Doctor Who.
Right.
And yeah. Okay. So
that's
what
a
other
good point,
have you
though,
heard?
because the time turner business is a fault for a lot of people. They don't like the time turner. They think it's stupid that all of a sudden these time turners can go back farther than they used
they're
to.
Like, all the time turners were destroyed, and now there's more. And it's like, I'm sorry, you don't think they could make more?
Yeah, I didn't have a problem. I mean, it's a little like, because J.K. Rowling said in the series that they were all gone, they had to explain on why there's more now. And the one that Malfoy has at the end is a little ex machina.
Very.
Like, ridiculously so.
Very.
However, I don't have a problem with the time turner story.
Mm-mm.
Even though I did read a fan fiction that was very similar to this.
And that's the thing, is there's still such a thing as good fan fiction.
Oh yeah, it was a very good story. I loved it a lot.
And it's obvious, it is obvious just from social media that J.K. Rowling is incredibly involved in this project and very much so loves the project.
Mm-hmm. She
has been involved in every step of the way. There are photos of her at rehearsals and writing with this, and she is there.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that she would just be like, yeah, just, do whatever you want with my universe.
No, I even watched interviews, and all of them, they said, like, how'd you come up with the script? And they were like, a lot of conversations. Mm-hmm. And it was between the three of them. They had lots of conversations, and then he wrote it down.
Authority over the entire design of the Wizarding World at the theme parks.
Mm-hmm.
And she has the ability to just go, no, that doesn't belong here.
Yeah.
And I don't believe there's any stories of her doing that,
right?
Because I'm sure there are professionals and brand marketers and all these people involved in the process that make sure everything's correct. But if she showed up and goes, that's the wrong shade of blue, and they would tear down the entire thing.
Yeah, they'd be like, okay.
Yeah, because it's hers.
Right.
So I imagine the same thing happened here. Are there any... Okay, so yeah, the time turners. Everyone's upset that this is they're using time turners and they're going back in time.
And it's going back more than like 3 hours, which is what they did in the third book.
Right. But then they kind of talk about that. They talk about it as if it's like a scientific principle. What do they call it? Like the Scorpius effect?
I don't remember that.
There's a point in the book where they talk about how there's this guy that says, there's a wizard at one point who says like, oh, you can't go back this far in time without causing irreparable damage to the timeline.
Right.
And so that's why the original time turners had a very limited amount of time, 5 hours.
Right.
Because if you went back any further, the magical doctrine of the universe said that it would like mess things up.
Yeah.
And turns out he's right if you do go back in time.
Which is like so
anything.
Obvious,
Yeah.
But I mean, it did make sense that in this magical world, there is a device that can put you back in time. And like, why not would the evil people make it further? Like that, I mean, that makes sense to me.
And it the way they explained it and the way they used it made sense in my head in the world of wizarding You know, it was very much like I was coming up with theories about like, oh, so you can go back in time but you can't go forward. Okay. Like I was creating this like universe of laws and like the physics of magic, and I was totally on board with it.
That is strange that they can't go forward. I'm sure that's in the next book.
I consider it very much a thing about like the way prophecies work in Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
About this idea of like the future has not happened yet.
Right.
That this isn't
so it's
stereotypical
not
science fiction where like you can go forward and stuff.
Right.
Like it's not actually Doctor Who where you can just jump around wherever you want. Like this is very much in this world, the past has happened, but the future has not.
Right.
And that's why prophecies exist. And that's why prophecies can be changed.
Yeah.
But the past is something that you obviously can go back to and can manipulate.
Yeah. So did you, because, I mean, and we've talked about this with Overwatch, like we were talking about what skins you wanted, and I was like, well, I like the skins that totally alter their personalities. So, like, these alternate timelines, I was having a ball with. I was like, this is so interesting.
I love the idea that Ron and Hermione are both big babies about their relationship with one another. That unless they're in life and death situations, they can't profess their love for one another.
Yeah.
Because in the normal Harry Potter universe, it takes them being in life and death situations
for them to kiss, right?
Finally kiss and tell each other. And then in another universe where Voldemort lives and Harry dies, it takes them being about to get their souls sucked out by Dementors to be like, hey, I love you. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
what is with them? They do not belong together.
Exactly. They in every universe, unless there's a life-threatening situation, neither one of them has the balls to be like, hey, I like you. And I like that because it worked. It's their characters.
It did work, definitely.
And let's talk a little bit about characters and the issues some people have. They seem to think that a lot of the characters have changed.
Well, yeah, there's been 19 years.
Right. That Harry's an asshole, and that Ron is a goof and a butt of everybody's joke.
Yeah.
And
I did feel that.
And, you know, that Cedric would never turn into a Death Eater just because he got humiliated in one event. You know, there's all this...
That did seem strange.
But my thing is I felt like Ron, in a writing perspective, was comic relief.
Yeah.
But one of the people were really upset because there's that line where Ron says like, "Hey, Hermione, you know, we should renew our vows. Like, wouldn't that be something sweet and cute?"
Yeah.
And he offhandedly is like, "Plus, I was a little drunk and I don't really remember a lot of it."
Yeah, that was surprising.
And Elizabeth and I pictured this as Ron's just joking around.
Right.
I imagine that, this is again in my head, Ron and Hermione got married. Ron got a little bit too drunk and rambunctious, and it's become a run-on joke in that family that Ron had to get drunk in order to marry her.
Right.
And I just imagine that as Ron poking around. I'm sure he remembers the wedding.
Yeah.
You know, he's just trying to be cute.
Right.
Ron, and I think...
That's a good point, because when I read it, I was like, oh... Okay,
and I think Ron in the books is very different from Ron in the movies.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I feel like people forget that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like this Ron was, and this may be completely against what other people think, but I felt this was more book Ron. He was funnier. He had, you know, he was never like the hero, and he never really like saved the day at any point.
That's so interesting, because I think the difference. I think this is more like movie Ron.
I just enjoyed the fact that he was goofy and funny, and he
had a lot of
ran
great
the joke
lines.
shop. Yeah, well, I mean, he was comic relief,
right?
And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, this play obviously needed it, or else he would have just been upset and crying the whole damn time.
Yeah, especially with Hermione being the minister. I mean, that's like a rough job. So he would have to fill that role in their family.
Just on a family level, on a personal level. It's like that thing about police officers. Mm-hmm. Police officers usually have really dark humor because you kind of have to make a joke about the kind of the terrible stuff that you see.
Absolutely.
You see that with doctors. You know, ER doctors, you know, they can be a little inappropriate because they deal with such stuff. So I like the idea that Ron is her comic relief as much as he is the comic relief in the script.
Yeah.
He's the comic relief in their life.
Absolutely.
I thought he was great. And the whole thing about Cedric is humiliated at the events of the Triwizard Tournament, and then as a result kind of goes down this path and becomes a Death Eater. There's never been a Hufflepuff Death Eater before. And so that would make Cedric the first one. But
Go
in
Hufflepuff. Go Hufflepuff.
Yeah, but in the universe of the world where Harry dies to Voldemort and Voldemort takes over, I can imagine there being some more, I guess, anger in the world, and you know, like lots of people turned and lots of people became, and Cedric was an abnormal Hufflepuff. You know, if you were going to tell me, oh, there's a Triwizard Tournament that chooses the best of the entire school, I would not pick a Hufflepuff student.
That's a good point. I never thought about that.
And we also know that, yes, there are the 4 houses and there are the 4 character traits, but there are mixes and blends. A lot of people argue that Dumbledore should have been a Slytherin because of how manipulative and passionate he was. And you know, Harry and Albus Potter both have a thing of Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. You know, I mean, not Ravenclaw, Slytherin. You know, so I don't think it's that impossible for a character we didn't really know.
Yeah, and I think that's what people forget. Like, we don't know him. I think we had a total of like 3 scenes maybe in 4, you know? And honestly, like, I don't remember liking him a lot.
He reminds me a lot of like that generic jock guy that plays on the water polo team.
Yeah, like, and plus, I mean, you're reading it from Harry Potter's point of view, and I remember everyone went crazy when, you know, Edward was casted as Cedric Diggory. I forget his name right now, I apologize. And I remember, and I always laugh because I didn't think he was attractive then, and then when he got casted for Twilight, people went crazy, and they're like, Cedric Diggory, and I was like, he's not me. Okay, anyway, he's not for me. Anyway, continuing. Like, I just, in the movie and in the book, I was just like, this is just, I mean, he's a spare. Like, he's a spare. Like, he's just like, I never connected really to that character.
So, yeah, and
so, like, because you don't know him.
And a lot of the stuff that we hear about him is after his death.
And it's from, like, his father, who is very biased.
So, of course, after a man is dead, and you're talking about him at, like, funerals and stuff, you're going to pay a little bit more respect. So, of course, you're going to say he was kind and generous and a friend, you know.
And I'm sure
and not
he
to say that he wasn't,
but
and
we
not
don't
to say
know
that he
him.
wasn't. Absolutely. So I have no problem with believing that there was a path that he could have followed following his, like, 5th year. Or, no, not 5th year, 6th year.
Oh, that's right.
That propels him towards a path.
Plus, you have
because
to remember
also,
it was
he would have been out of
19
Hogwarts
years.
at that point.
Yeah, it's 19 years before at that point. So he's
Exactly.
humiliated at the Triwizard. It's not like the next day he becomes a Death Eater. Like, there's 19 years.
Yeah, he graduates in 2 years.
Although
The
he
battle
did
for
kill
Hogwarts
Neville.
doesn't take. The battle for Hogwarts doesn't happen for another 2 years after that. So he's out of Hogwarts for 2 years.
Right.
Before returning to the school to kill Neville Longbottom.
Yeah, so that is actually a quicker
So
transition
lots of
than I
stuff
thought.
could have happened in those
But-
4 years.
Absolutely.
Or sorry, it would have been
2.
3 years. I apologize. Because it was Harry Potter's 4th year, graduated 7th year. Okay, sorry, 3 years, not 4.
3.
So yeah, a lot of could have happened.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do think that transition is quick, but it's not the next day. It's not because he was humiliated the next day he was a Death Eater. Like, and
we don't see how far he falls down that hole. We don't know how deep of a Death Eater he becomes. All we know is he kills Neville.
I know, like, that's a good point, because that's all we hear about, and then again, it's 19 years later. So, like, he could have totally regretted that decision. And he could probably feel blame for this, how the outcome is, he could probably be dead again.
Yeah.
Because they don't talk about him after that, do they? They're
no,
not.
they just
it's not
know.
like
Cedric's a Death Eater.
Here's Cedric Diggory, our prize Death Eater, right here.
Yeah,
in
he
school.
doesn't show up as the right hand of the augury. Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's not there doing stuff.
Oh, I'm glad you said it because I have no idea how to pronounce that word. I just read right over it.
It's augury.
Augury.
Yeah.
I am talking about characters. I'm disappointed, and although when I was reading it, I didn't even notice until the end. But I am disappointed that there was no Teddy Lupin.
Yes.
Like, not at all. Like, not even a mention.
Yeah.
Not even like, oh yeah, he's over there picking strawberries. Like.
And I think that's a thing of, there's already a lot of characters.
Yeah.
And this is not a story of Hogwarts.
Right.
We gloss over 4 years of Hogwarts in it, and like 3 scenes.
Which I really enjoyed.
We skip over all the development and all because we already know it.
Yeah.
We know what happens at the school.
Yes. I was
it's
so
like, sure,
glad.
it would have been cool to see, Neville teaching classes. That would have been a fun scene to see. It would have been cool to see who's the new Transfiguration teacher since McGonagall's headmistress. But it's like, we don't need to.
No.
And so,
and
the
I
fact
liked
that Lupin...
It progressed Albus's character. He's not this 11-year-old. He's already this, 14-year-old
young man,
who...
this teenager.
Is going through some stuff and has already had 3 years experience in Hogwarts and doesn't like it. It's not like he's like, oh, I tried it once and I don't like it. Right. It's like, this is actual experiences. And so it solidified him for me.
Yeah, and it was, we don't need to spend forever at that school.
Right.
We know what happens. We know what goes on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was just a thing of Teddy doesn't have any role in the story. He's not important to the story. It would have just been weird to try and shoehorn him in.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised they didn't make him important to the story because he's such a beloved character, and they didn't even mention him in the epilogue, which he is in the epilogue. Like, not even that mention you're gonna give?
I was wondering when that was going to happen because in the very beginning when it was just Scorpius and Albus together hanging out, I kept thinking to myself, okay, well, it has to be a trio.
Yeah, me too. I thought the
it's
same.
The trio. It's Harry, Ron, and Hermione, so it's Scorpius, Albus, and I kept thinking, I wonder if like Rose is going to come around or if like Teddy Lupin's just going to show up. Those are my two thoughts. Well, and then when Delphi showed up, I was like, oh, it's Delphi.
Right.
She's the third. Okay, like that made sense to me. And I kind of pushed any thought of Teddy I had aside the moment Delphi showed up, and I forgot about him until you mentioned him just now.
I know. Like, I literally thought about him during the first act or whatever, or like that first part when it's literally the epilogue just again in play form. Because I was like, oh, where's that part where they mentioned Teddy in the backseat?
Because like lines are different.
Yeah.
It's not like a direct thing, and it's
no.
like, who cares?
I was like, this is how they have it in the play is like
a longer scene if it was.
I was like, that's how I remember it. Like when I look back and I'm like, what happens in the epilogue? It's like him talking about Severus and Albus and how they were headmasters.
Such a long scene if it was the exact epilogue. It'd be like 5 times as longer if they included every damn line.
Yeah. So that was the only time where I was like, oh yeah, like Teddy's in this part somewhere because I don't remember exactly. And then when they like moved on and they never mentioned him, I completely forgot, and I didn't think about him until after the book was done.
Well, I mean, and Teddy Lupin is completely cut out of the book, but James Potter Jr. is in this book for like nothing,
which was really surprising to me. So there's surprising characters.
His brother is off having these adventures, and his father's running around,
and he's having a great old time,
and James is just like playing Quidditch.
I'm doing great, Dad. I have O's on my house.
Yeah, and Rose is there just as like, okay.
So I was upset about her not being in this.
So another complaint I heard was how they're upset that Rose is so stuck up and how she admonishes and ignores her own cousin for 4 straight years and all this stuff. Rose is Hermione.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rose is like a clone of her mother.
Yeah.
And if we remember correctly, first day we meet Hermione on the train, she's a stuck-up, annoying brat.
Yeah.
She is.
Pleasure.
Everyone just can't stand her.
Yeah.
Ron and Hermione can't stand, and she can't stand them. And it takes a goddamn troll to almost murder her and have those two boys save her life, that makes them go, okay, all right,
okay.
I'll put up with you. You saved my life.
Yeah, we have
Rose doesn't have that.
Yeah.
The boys give up on her as much as she gives up on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, of course she's, prissy and annoying and snobby, because that's who Hermione was for a very good part of the book.
It's just fascinating that with Ron's influence, she's like totally Hermione. And with Hermione's change, it's like, how did she go back to the snobby?
Well, I think Hermione kind of fell back. I think becoming Minister of Magic might go to your head a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I think if your mother is the Minister of Magic and then your dad runs a joke shop, you probably go after...
Yeah.
Also, when your dad's embarrassing and is constantly cracking jokes, and his birthday presents to all of your cousins and family members are like joke gifts, you're rolling his eyes at him, and then there's your strong, wonderful mother, who doesn't take his last name, by the way, she becomes Rose Granger Weasley.
Yeah.
Whereas Ginny's just Ginny Potter.
I thought that I noticed that.
I think Hermione is a very tough, strong female character, so I think her daughter going after her more than her father is totally acceptable to me.
I loved in the alternate timeline when it's like it's the Voldemort one where Harry Potter is dead, I think.
Uh-huh.
And Hermione is like dressed in the battle gear, and it's like she wears it very well.
Right.
And then Ron is like, he doesn't wear it well.
Yeah, I believe he doesn't wear it as well.
Yeah.
Like it works, but
yeah. I thought that was so funny.
I think Ron is a guy that wants to do good work, that he wants to save the day and everything,
Yeah.
But it's like the role doesn't fit him as well,
Yeah.
Not to say that he's not a world saver and a great wizard and an awesome person overall. It's just, he's just awkward.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I was just like thinking back, I was like, what has he done? I mean, he did the chessboard, but now I get confused with the movies.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. In the books, he's the one that figures out the vines.
That's right.
Hermione's flipping out, and he's the one that's like, Hermione, you're a witch.
Yeah.
We don't need to light a fire. We have wands.
Yeah.
Like, he also is the one that knows about Beetle and the Bard.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that's met... Hermione and Harry are Muggle-born.
Yeah.
Or Muggle-raised. And they don't know about the wizarding world.
Right.
So for most of the books, Ron
that
is the one...
really good sound effect.
Ron is the one that shows up and knows all about this.
Mm-hmm.
Hermione's got the book smarts, but Ron has the street smarts. He knows about the wizarding world, like culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of his roles that he has in the books, where he's a very useful source of knowledge, is given to Hermione just because she's the smart one.
She's the smart one, absolutely. She's the smartest witch of her age.
Okay, who's the best character? Maybe not like good best, but like your favorite.
I love Scorpius.
He's fucking right. He's the best. He was so fun to read.
He was really fun to read.
Perfect mix of like serious black snarkiness, the Hermione nerdiness, but then like the bravery and the charm that like Ron has of like the reluctant sidekick who's like, you're dragging me into this mess again, and like still jumping into the abyss following him,
Yeah.
Scorpius was an incredibly affectionate, appealing character that you immediately fell in love with. Like, Like, the moment I started reading him, I was like, he's great.
I did the same.
His dialogue is fantastic. His smarminess and his sarcasm is wonderful.
Yeah.
His inner conflicts that he has in the fight that he has with Albus near the end about, like, you keep throwing this pity party.
Yeah.
It's like, you have Harry Potter as a father, but I have Voldemort watching people think Voldemort's my father.
Right.
Like, you have nothing compared to the turmoil and the shit I have to put up with.
Yeah.
And I loved reading him. I loved being his voice. I loved acting that character. And
he was great. Can we get a sample of Scorpius?
Scorpius just sounds like he sounded a lot like Sirius Black originally. Where's my damn book?
This is a
you know what Albus sounds like?
What? How does
Albus sounds like me?
That makes sense.
Me. Harry, because when I read the original Harry Potter books, Harry is just a British version of me.
Right.
So Harry talks like this. But Professor McGonagall, Hermione, where are you going? You know, it was like a slightly British version. Whereas I just got rid of because there's so many damn characters in this book.
Absolutely.
And so differentiating the voices was a very big thing. When Umbridge showed up.
Yes.
I just dropped my book.
Which was fun.
When Umbridge showed up, I read Umbridge, and I just went right into her voice. Because she hasn't, like... in the stage direction, doesn't say like Umbridge appears looming over them. It's just Umbridge starts talking.
Right.
And I got like 3 words in, and Elizabeth went, "Oh no!" Like Elizabeth knew that it was Umbridge just based on the voice. Like she remembered her from like 2 summers ago.
That's
like,
amazing.
Oh my God, it's Umbridge. No, because it's Harry Potter. What do we have here? You know.
So that was one thing in the book, the play. I was ready for her to interrupt someone and be like, but they didn't do that.
Yeah. Mr. Potter. But it was fun to do. It was fun to do Dumbledore again and have him back.
Yeah.
I think a very big part of Harry's journey in the last book, when they're searching for the Horcruxes, it stops being a search of the Horcruxes and it starts being a search for Dumbledore's truth. Because Harry has lived his life knowing good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And Voldemort is evil and Dumbledore is good.
Right.
And as when Dumbledore dies, both the good figure in his life is now gone, but now he's starting to learn about who Dumbledore was as a person, as a man, and is not liking what he hears.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes this search for, I have to find out if this is true or not. Because to Harry, if the man he epitomizes as what's good in the world isn't good, and is a bad, manipulative man,
mm-hmm.
and not the god that Harry has made him up to be, and that we as an audience, as readers, have made him to be, then Harry's world is backwards and wrong and upside down. So that becomes Harry's true quest for a period of time in that last book. And Hermione has to keep reminding him, like, this isn't a search for Dumbledore. We need to look for these Horcruxes. This isn't important. And so we kind of learn about Dumbledore a lot, and we learn about his motivations, and we learn that he was a manipulative and very kind of deceitful person
mm-hmm.
sometimes. And that although it was for the greater good, mm-hmm. which becomes this idea of like, well, is that good and is that bad? And where does morality lie? And does it really just end up whoever wins is right? You know,
mm-hmm.
and so many philosophical questions can be ascertained from just the moments we share with Dumbledore in the last book and the moments we learn about him. Everyone kind of forms their own opinion of who Dumbledore is, but at the end of that book. And so I feel like this play was a moment for Rowling and for the director and the writer to further dive into that relationship. Because we as readers got to see who Dumbledore was truly, but I think we never really came to terms with it, and we never got to hear Dumbledore defend himself, I guess. And so this was a time, even though my opinion of Dumbledore didn't change, I didn't learn anything new about Dumbledore, I didn't hate him or like him more or less, it was just a time for Harry and him to talk about the things that Harry had learned in that last book.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to see Dumbledore again. I enjoyed him telling Harry again that he loves him and that he admits his wrongs and that he is sorry and that he was just doing it to protect the world, you know, and
right.
as hard as it is sometimes for Harry to hear that, you know, that he was being used, essentially. Like, Dumbledore knew he was going to go out into that forest one day and die. He knew that from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And he hid that from Harry to protect him.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry has an outburst, and he's like, no, you did it to protect yourself, and you're selfish. And Dumbledore's like, you're right. and I
You're
like,
right.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't J.K. Rowling being like, oh, guys, Dumbledore is good. At the end of it, Dumbledore was still a flawed, manipulative man.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that, and they go, we're all flawed.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the MuggleCast episode, they all believed that this book actually goes against the idea of the first 7 books, and that it was more reason to relive the past, and that the story doesn't move anything forward.
It goes against the ideas of the previous 7 books?
Yeah. I wish I would have wrote more, but
I mean,
did not.
The argument that nothing changed is true in the sense... okay, there's 2 levels to that.
Yeah.
1, nothing changed in the world.
Right.
They went back in time to change the world, realized that if they did, they'd fuck everything up.
Mm-hmm.
So then they had to go back in time like 5 more times to then not change anything.
Right.
Because they realized that what they had was good,
Mm-hmm.
and that they shouldn't mess it up.
Yeah.
So the whole play, the whole part 1 and part 2, is about them going back in time to fix things, realizing that you can't fix things, that you just screw it up more, and then going back in time again to stop themselves from going back in time to fix things.
Yeah.
Very Doctor Who, very much like going in on yourself.
Absolutely.
But it's not, this book, because we discussed before, it's not about Hogwarts. It's also not really about the Wizarding World.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the people.
Absolutely.
And as people, they all absolutely changed.
Yeah, which I thought the same. I thought the characters changed a lot, and and because they were kind of upset that there was no lasting consequences of going back in time. I was like, but I don't want there to be
the consequences.
I was like, I don't want there to be lasting consequences. Like, these are my beloved characters, and I would say the same thing about the first series. You know, like, every year something went wrong and they fixed it and nothing changed. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And
then
so
there's a conflict and a resolution.
Like, that's why I wasn't really upset with the Ex Machina with the Time Turner, Draco's Time Turner. Because
it's like, oh yeah, my dad had one.
He's like, yeah, and I didn't want to bring it up because then the rumors would have been more true than they're fake, you know? And I was like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But, like, I had no problem with that because that's how the first series was. You know, they would, at the end, they would find a way to fix everything, and everything was peachy at the end. And, you know, because after all, it is a kid's book. Like, let's remember, like, these are children's books. And so I didn't have a problem with that, especially when, you know, the first part ends and they're in a world where Harry Potter is dead. Like, it was never a question for me of like, oh my gosh, like, the Harry Potter world now will not be without Harry Potter. Like, my question was, how are they going to get everything back together?
Yeah.
You know, because I knew that would happen. And they took that as a con, where I took it as a pro. Like, I enjoyed that because I was like, how are they going to fix this? Like, how are they... I mean, it's just Scorpius. Like, Albus isn't even there.
When you look at the book and you're like, okay, thank God, I still have a whole part left.
Yeah, I'm literally 50%
but it was also at the same time
way
of
through.
like, what more is going to go wrong?
Yeah.
Like, how are they going to fuck this up again?
Yeah, I did the same.
Yeah, I mean, because also, like we said, we read this as plays.
Yeah.
And a play is a lot more personal. And a play is a lot more intimate and small than a movie. Or hell, even a book. And, you know, the fact that it really takes place over a very small amount of time. The beginning jumps ahead really far in time.
Yeah.
Like, first year, then all of a sudden 4th year. And then the entirety of the book takes place in the 4th year.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's smaller, it's intimate, it's about the people, it's not about the world, it's not about the universe, it's about Albus, it's about Scorpius, it's about Harry, and it's about Draco. it's about family and love and relationships. You know, it's about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about how are we going to save the world. You know, it's just they needed a conflict. And so they wrote in Delphi. Delphi's the conflict. Delphi's the daughter of Voldemort. Spoilers. Yeah. And
I love how you say it after.
we already reminded them. And so, you know, it's we get to see these characters evolve. We get to see them grow. Mm-hmm. And I like that. I like that a lot. I feel like a lot of the angry comments that I'm seeing are just without people understanding the context. Mm-hmm. This is 20 years in the future. This is a play. This is about Albus and Scorpius. And this is another thing. All 7 Harry Potter books take place from the viewpoint, well, not from of Harry Potter.
Right.
If Harry doesn't know about it, we don't know about it.
Right.
There's never a scene where we're, like, following Professor McGonagall around.
Mm-hmm.
The only 2 times that I believe that happens is when Severus Snape is talking to the strangers. Bellatrix and her sister.
That's right.
And the only other time that I can think of, but it kind of works itself out, is in the beginning of the 4th book when we're watching the perspective of the caretaker. Yeah. But then it all turns out to be in Harry's dream.
Right, but he wouldn't have seen the first part.
Right.
But still.
Right. That's there probably is more, and I just can't think of them. Those are like the first 2 that I thought of.
Those are the main ones.
7 books, it's through Harry's perspective.
Yeah.
And if this script worked the same way, it would all be through Albus's perspective. Mm-hmm. But that wouldn't work because there's a whole point of the book where Albus isn't there. He's gone. He doesn't exist.
So that brings to the question, 2 questions. When I was reading it, and they have the stage direction and the acts, you know, and every time there was a new act, they pretty much changed locations.
You mean scene?
Scenes. Sorry. Apologies. And so that kind of threw me off visualizing it as a stage performance because I was like, damn, they are changing locations like no one's
Constantly.
Business.
Yeah.
I felt terrible for their tech team because they have to move around these platforms and they go from like the same locations. Like if they have location A and location B, they went from like A to B to A to B to A to B.
Have you seen photos of the stage that they're doing this on? The theater is tiny.
Oh, is it really?
It's really small. Like, it's not like what you imagine, like this huge, enormous amphitheater or something.
Because I'm imagining,
like, small theater.
The theater that I saw Wicked in.
I imagine that the play worked on a couple of levels. One, video projections. Mm-hmm. That there's a lot of, like, screens and scrims and stuff in the background that are being projected onto. Mm-hmm. The lack of blackouts. Blackouts aren't... There's cues written into the script about, like, and cut to black. Mm-hmm. But not every scene does that. So I imagine sometimes that the stage might be split in half. Mm-hmm. That Harry and Hermione are having a scene on the left. They fade out as the right side of the stage fades in, and there's Scorpius and Albus hanging out. And so half the stage is going through a set change. Or they're really far upstage. Sorry, they're really far downstage towards the audience, and only downstage is lit. Mm-hmm. We don't even see anything behind them. It's all black.
Yeah.
And then the lights come up upstage, and it's like, oh, we're in a whole new place. You know? So, I mean...
That makes way more sense, because I kept picturing them, like, moving platforms and like moving sets.
Every scene it cuts to black. There's a 5-minute interlude while the band plays music.
No wonder this plays so long and they had to divide it into spots, because this would take forever and it would like totally ruin the momentum. But the way you describe it is like, wait, that's totally plausible. Because
again, like we've heard, that the actors aren't great and that the sets and the technical achievement alone is incredible.
Yeah, I hear it's amazing.
And then we just hear complaints about the story.
Right.
But you and I are saying this story is great and we love it. So then the acting and the special effects must be insane. So it's like, for us, it's like, well, now we really have to see it. You know?
I'm really interested. I know, and I'm wondering because again, like from I take it back, because there was reviews from... I was going to say the Muggle cast, they had seen it. So I was wondering if it was different with us reading it. But there's book readers who don't like it. So I take that back. We can edit this out. Because that was nothing. But so again, going to Scorpius, which we haven't heard your portrayal yet of Scorpius.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not too exciting. It's just like
I'm sure it's very.
It's a
exciting.
deeper form. It's fucking. I when I opened my book earlier, I literally opened to the scene where him and Albus are like shouting at each other.
Oh, nice. We can get it. We can get a very dramatic reveal of Scorpius.
Can't find it now. It's this thing.
Okay, no worries.
But I love being Ludo Bagman again. Like I remember when he appeared in the 4th book, and he was one of the voices at the Quidditch World Cup.
Yeah.
And I got to be this very boisterous television announcer with a British accent. So, and they're off again, and they're sliding through the victory pole. You know,
which is so funny because like. I mean,
I got to do
I
Moaning
read these
Myrtle
books.
again.
Oh, yeah.
She's fun. She's back. Yeah.
Because, like, I read these books, like, once. I've read the first...
Really?
Yeah, see, I don't reread books a lot.
I've read each of them at least 5 times.
Which is great, because then you have that knowledge for this podcast or for this video.
For this specific episode.
Yeah, just that, because and then it's a shame, because I have, like, short-term memory loss, so I don't remember them very well. So I don't, where like the movies I remember very well. Like it's just that visual, you know. Uh-huh. So like what's that?
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So when this Ludo Bagman character came on, I was like, was he in the 4th book? Like I was like, I don't even know who this is. Like I don't remember this character at all. But it was still fun to read.
Professor Croker's Law. Croker's Law. It's the law about how you can't go back farther than 5 hours.
Okay. And it is 5?
Further someone can go back in time without the possibility of serious harm to the traveler or time itself is 5 hours.
Serious harm to... Oh, because like if you change something, you could be non-existent.
You could not exist.
That would be considered harm.
Yeah, that counts. That counts.
Talking about harm, because I didn't understand this in the book, or in this play. When they got back and they like hurt his arm.
Albus breaks his arm and then Ron's just in terrible pain.
But I think he broke his arm too. It was like the same thing happened. And I don't understand why, because nothing hit them or anything. And they were in like 2 different locations. It was just like that time. Like that to me was just written in because they needed Ron to stay with Hermione. Like, and that's why Albus got hurt in the first place. Like it just seemed very out of place and they never explained why that happened, but Scorpius was like, I thought this might have happened. Like, and so I thought that was a little silly because it was interesting at first, but then when it happened to Ron, I was like, oh, this is why it was written, because they needed him to stay.
I pictured it as just like it's a violent thing. Mm-hmm. Going back in time that far and then being ripped back into time.
And
like, that's how I imagined it the first time.
If it happened every time. But then the 3 other times injured. That they do it, everyone's okay.
Yeah, there's just like that one, because I think it was a scene I think it was written in as a way like, oh, this way Harry and Albus can have a talk in the hospital wing. And,
it just
this way Ron's injured and so he stays with Hermione. Yeah. I mean,
if we're being nitpicky about it, it was just like, what? Why? Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, I think that's a good sign when that's like our biggest problem.
Yeah. Well, that, and I was upset that Rose didn't have more screen time, if you will, quote unquote.
I think my biggest issue was the Deus Ex Machina with the fact that the Malfoys had a time turner hidden for all these years. That was a little silly. And the fact that, like, throughout all this time, they searched the Malfoy's house constantly, and, like, they never found the time turner.
Well, it was in his pocket the whole time.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But, like, they're very minor things.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like we would say, overall, very, very good. So I want to talk a little bit about. I don't want to get too emotional with it. But I felt very personal connections to this book, specifically to Albus.
Okay.
And his relationship that he had with his family.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, without getting too personal.
Let's delve into this.
Yeah, I mean, without being too personal, it was interesting because there's the scene where Albus is in trouble. He's run away. Harry is upset with him.
Mm-hmm.
Rightfully so. His son ran away. And Harry freaks out.
Right.
And we know, and that's the thing. We kind of understand both. Harry didn't have a father.
Mm-hmm.
Harry's father died. And so, of course, Harry wants to do everything he can to be a father for his son.
Right.
So the risk of almost losing his son kind of freaks him out a bit.
Absolutely.
And whether that's rightfully so or not, he kind of goes into this rage, and he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to keep him safe. I'm going to get the headmistress of the school, who has all these other responsibilities, to spy on my son.
Yeah,
and keep a watch on them.
That was good.
And I'm going to yell and scream, and we're going to be checking up on you, and we're going to be following you, and we're going to be on your tail, and you're not going to be able to do anything, and you can't hang out with your friends.
Right. And
all of that stuff is incredibly reminiscent to my high school years with my family. And the interesting relationship that they had that was so full of turmoil and stress and anger and yelling about, like, you know, I had these family members, sisters older than me, who are incredible students and incredibly talented and the favorite of the family, you know, going off to college and doing all these things, perfect SAT scores, wonderful GPAs, you know, and then I come along and don't do well in school and don't get good test grades and, you know, am not succeeding their expectations. And so to me it was, well, I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to be like them. So, like, what's the point?
Right.
And I really related to Albus a lot, you know? Like, I didn't have a father who saved the world, but I had expectations. Whether they were in my head or not, there were expectations. But the thing is Albus and Harry shared something.
Yeah.
There is that moment at the end that united them, and they finally were able to work on their issues. And the end of the story isn't that Harry and Albus are now fixed and they're best friends and everything's going to be happy. It's that they are now both making effort to move forward and connect.
Yeah.
And that was emotional for me because I never got that.
Right.
I never got that moment where I could further the relationship with my family and connect. And so it was their whole relationship and Albus's frustrations with his father and Albus's frustrations with his family and proving them wrong and being like, well, because it was obvious. He wasn't doing this because he wanted to save Cedric.
No.
He was doing this as a big middle finger to his father.
Yeah.
As I did the thing that you couldn't.
Yeah.
I'm doing the one thing that perfect Harry Potter failed at. I'm going to do, and I'm going to show him up.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
And that's a Harry thing.
Yeah.
A classic act of rebellion. And so another interesting thing is for 7 books, Harry rebelled. Harry broke rules. Harry did things that were entirely dangerous that if he had screwed up would have had completely detrimental effects in the world.
He would have died.
He would have died, and
like every
the
year.
whole world, yeah. But he had Dumbledore, an authority figure, telling him and telling the readers the whole time that it was okay, that he was supposed to do this. That it was turning a blind eye.
Yeah.
Albus doesn't have that. Albus is doing the exact same mischief that Harry put himself up to. Fighting Voldemort, going off on these adventures, using a time turner.
Yeah.
Maybe in a bigger scale. But he didn't have a Dumbledore going, go back in time, save Cedric,
I know what you're doing, and it's okay.
Yeah, he didn't have that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like before even the characters, Albus and Harry, turn to each other and say, wow, am I a lot like you? And wow, are you a lot like me? And are we actually the same person? Before they had that moment at the very end of the book, we, as readers, were going, oh my god, you're the same person. Just talk it out.
Yeah.
Like, you are each other.
Yeah.
You're both lost and confused and angry with the world. We have to remember, Harry was kind of upset that he was being forced into all of this in the very beginning. I was like,
absolutely.
why me?
Yeah.
And
he's like, I just found out I was a wizard like 2 days ago.
And
Can
now
we
you're telling
like
me
calm down?
I had to save the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that part in Chamber of Secrets when he's like, and in the movie it's done really well when he's like, I told him to turn away. Like, didn't you hear me tell the snake to turn away? And they're like, no, like we can't, that's really rare. And he's like, what? I'm still finding things out about myself. Like, no, like I don't know anything about myself and this world, even about his father, like winning the award and stuff like that. Like, I just, Harry Potter's such a fun character.
And I heard a complaint that, like, Albus is, like, he's so annoying and he's so whiny and, like, he's just being disobedient.
I did get a sense that this was, like, fifth book Harry Potter, which
absolutely.
A lot of people, like I said, did not like.
Because he is so angsty and angry and kind of a jerk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But honestly, the Order of the Phoenix is like, well, especially that part of Harry is like my second favorite because I just thought it was so realistic. Like, I was like, yeah, you think you have a part of the Dark Lord in you? Like, you're gonna be a little angry, like, and you're like worried that you're gonna become this evil being.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like I would be angsty. I don't know about you.
And also, during the fifth book, who shows up? Sirius Black.
Yeah.
Sirius Black is now a significant father figure in his life, who is the definition of the angsty, rebellious teenager.
I know, yeah, definitely.
So, of course, he's going to pick up on his habits. Yeah. Of course, he's going to be susceptible to that kind of life.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's why I loved Albus. Like, I definitely picked up tones of fifth book Harry Potter angst, and anger. And so because I liked that, I really liked this book because I thought that was very interesting and it made sense. Like, I actually was shocked that James was A-okay and doing really well in school because I'm like, when you have your father is, let's do a real world example. Like, my father is Michael Phelps, or my father is Michael Jordan, these are big time names. Or let's even do celebrities like freaking Tom Hanks or something, If that's your parent,
Well, Tom Hanks is a perfect example because he has, I believe, 2 sons, one of which is an incredibly successful filmmaker and actor, and the other is not.
Is not.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is like real world situation, if you will. Like, if you have a person personal. Who is that worldwide known, like, you're gonna have some issues growing up. Like, it's just a fact. And so that's why I was actually shocked there wasn't more James in this book, just even as a parallel, like something to compare against, but he really wasn't. I was kind of shocked. I would want more James.
Yeah.
Especially
and
when
I think
he's
the idea
named
was
after
is that
his
James
father.
is like, the perfect child that you never have to check up on.
Yeah.
Albus was like, well, he's doing well in Quidditch and he's doing well in school and he's got the invisibility cloak and he's living his life. I pictured James as James Potter Sr.
Right. But he was a troublemaker too.
Yeah.
He was kind of a douche. Actually, I want more scenes of Lily and James in school because I don't understand how they got together. They never explain that.
I think because we stop. I think James changed. I think 4th year James became a different person.
Like after the whole thing with Severus.
Yeah, and I think, because again, how old would he have been in the 4th year? 15?
You're 14. 14 turning 15.
Yeah,
because he's 11 in the first one.
So I was
right.
Yeah,
we changed. Yeah. I would not want to hang out with my 15-year-old self.
So I was online and I'm reading reviews and I'm reading what people are saying about it. And a lot of the complaints that people have, I'm going I didn't really have a problem with that. And in fact, I liked that part and stuff. And there was a couple of things I saw a couple of people mention the Ex Machina thing with the time with the time turner, and a couple of complaints here and there that I was like, all right, you're allowed to complain about that.
Absolutely.
That's your own personal opinion.
Oh gosh.
But there was one that I thought was the dumbest complaint ever, and someone was worked up about it.
And it has no grain.
And there's
no sustenance.
They were upset, and I kid you not, that Harry Potter is afraid of pigeons.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
At the very end of the book, there's an offhanded comment where Harry's like, Albus, you think I'm not afraid of, I'm afraid of the dark, I'm afraid of small and closed spaces, those kind of creep me out, and I think pigeons are creepy.
Yeah.
And it becomes this kind of joke of like, what, you think pigeons are creepy?
Yeah, and he like
I don't
cringes,
know what it is.
You know?
They're just creepy.
It was so cute.
Exactly. And someone's like, really? In 7 whole books, you never once mentioned that Harry's afraid of pigeons, and then all of a sudden it comes up.
That was the thing. They actually talked about that.
20 years is a lot of time to become afraid of pigeons.
They talked about that in the podcast, and I was actually, when I read it,
it was
like,
cute.
It was a cute factoid, but then, like, when I thought about it, I'm like, I think he's just joking.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
he's trying
joke.
to make his son feel better.
Yeah, like, you know, even pigeons, you know, kind of thing, and like,
because it's like that thing about like, I'm afraid of the dark. Everyone is.
Right.
Everyone has that moment where you're like in the basement and you turn off the light and you run up the stairs as quickly as you can.
Except you, because you're not afraid of anything.
I'm not afraid of anything, but that's for completely different reasons. But no, like everyone in the world experiences that thing where you're just kind of creeped out by the darkness.
Yes.
Or it's like, I'm stuck in this box and I feel uncomfortable, you know? So it's not too far-fetched that Harry, in a moment where he's trying to share something with his son and have a deep and personal connection, just cracks a joke and says, I'm afraid of pigeons.
Yeah, and even if he really is afraid of pigeons, like, you know, there was no reason for that to come up in the first series.
There's no pigeons hanging out in the Hogwarts classrooms.
You know, I had no problem with that line, but I did hear that a lot of people were like, really?
It was literally like one line at the very end when they're having a moment.
It's a deal breaker, Riley. It makes the whole book, it's just terrible.
So I just felt like people were being very critical and okay. And now let's get into like the actual reviews here, because I'm gonna do a little monologue here.
Hold on. Okay, no, go ahead. I just have one more question about the book before we do our review, but you can go ahead.
No. Let's do the question.
Okay, because you're a review. Okay, So my question is, and I have a theory about it. Who is the cursed child then?
Okay, well, the idea is that in Harry Potter things are very ambiguous and nondescript on purpose for you to allow yourself to kind of create ideas.
Right.
And there's a prophecy. And the prophecy is that there is a spare, the spare will be spared, and then the lost child will kill his or the unseen child will kill his father, and then the Dark Lord will arise again. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of different options onto who the cursed child is.
Correct.
Cursed child option number 1, Albus Potter. Mm-hmm. He has a father who also had a prophecy about him, about the Dark Lord, and then suddenly he has another prophecy about him, about how he's supposed to kill his father and bring the Dark Lord back. And he's
and he's the only person in a Gryffindor family to be Slytherin for relatively no reason.
He's been dealt the bad hand.
Yeah.
Cursed child number 2, Scorpius Malfoy.
Yes, nobody talks about this, and I'm like,
he's the exact same situation.
I was like, he screams cursed child to me. In fact, so much so that I thought, oh, is he the main person in this story?
And in fact, there's a line by Draco Malfoy in which he says, my wife had a terrible blood anomaly, like it was. He goes, you know how curses work. They pop up later in generations.
Right. Yeah.
She was cursed with this ailment, and now their son might be cursed with the same thing, plus even more.
Yeah.
Cursed with this looming shadow of Voldemort over him. Mm-hmm. Cursed with a father he doesn't understand.
Who was a ex-Death Eater.
Who's cursed with the Death Eater name despite his completely innocent ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm just like so surprised because everyone's like, you know, it's Delphi and Albus, and I was like, no,
there's an alternate
Scorpius.
Universe where he becomes the top dog.
Yeah. Oh, that was fun.
So now So he's been cursed. He didn't get any of that. Maybe that's the curse.
Yeah.
All right. And then there's 2 more.
Right.
Delphi.
Yep.
Daughter of Voldemort.
Absolutely.
That's gonna curse you.
Well, and because of the cover with the wings, people are like, oh, that's Delphi on the cover. And I was like, I didn't think that was a girl, actually.
And then the last option is Cedric Diggory.
Oh, nice. Because I was actually thinking Harry Potter. But although that doesn't make sense because Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. How could he be the Cursed Child? Continue.
That Cedric Diggory was cursed to die. That he was going to.
Yeah.
And, you know, nothing that they tried to change in the back. If they changed it, then he just became even more cursed and he becomes a Death Eater and he murders Neville Longbottom.
Yeah.
His is a lot less likely. So really, it comes down to 3.
No, I like Cedric Diggory a lot because, I mean, he is a cursed child. Anything, you change his lifespan and the
One tiny
world
bit.
does not look good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, the first timeline, it's only a little bit because it's just like Rose isn't there, you know, like it's just like little tiny things, but it's like he
do it even more and the world suddenly becomes an entirely
like
darker
literally
place.
You make one change in the Triwizard Tournament and a life isn't born,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like a love isn't, you know, flourished. And so it's like, I totally get behind that he's also a cursed child because he needs to die in order for the world to be a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Harry Potter.
But yeah, I think it's down to the 3, really. I think it's either Albus, Scorpius, or Delphi. And
I think it's actually all of them. That's my theory.
Right. Because that's the thing.
Yeah.
Unlike Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
Yeah.
You know what the Goblet of Fire
It's,
is. Prisoner of Azkaban. It's Sirius Black.
Sirius Black.
Order of the Phoenix. It's the group of people fighting under Dumbledore's name.
You know who named themselves the Order of the Phoenix.
The Half-Blood Prince. Oh, look at the end. We find out that the Half-Blood Prince is actually Severus Snape. Like, it explains it.
Yeah.
And the fact that it doesn't here, it gives us the ability to choose.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think it's all 3 or just one of the 3 or you know,
yeah,
or none of them, you know.
And
I
I
mean,
like the idea that it is all of them / none of them because they all believe they are the cursed child. It's not necessarily someone saying you're cursed. It's all of them being like, I was dealt a bad hand. I am a cursed child. You know, it's like how they identify themselves.
Well, that's interesting though because Delphi doesn't admonish her birth. Delphi relishes in the prophecy. Delphi, like, wants this to be true.
That's true.
So I guess... But again, you can make arguments to say otherwise. I mean, you can make arguments to say that Delphi is, you know, she would have been a normal child if she didn't know about her birth.
Exactly.
And,
that's kind of...
I mean...
Yeah, definitely where I was leading to.
So, I mean, again... we as the readers get to choose.
Because, like, at the end there, she's like, I just want to meet my father, you know, and I can't.
The book cover has the wings.
Right.
But it also looks like a snitch to me.
That's what people said, and I did not catch on to that until I read that, and I was like, I'm so stupid. I miss symbols that are, like, literally
because before the augury is even introduced and we're seeing that symbol, I just thought it was a golden snitch.
Absolutely.
And
I get that now.
And yeah, the wings on the back of the book, they're like ink and they're black.
Yeah, but you
and
have
so it's very much
right
like
here.
It looks like a tattoo.
Yeah.
But I mean, it literally could. Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, that's Delphi in there, and I was like, huh, I didn't. I don't catch on to that.
It's a very young child.
But I mean, that's the whole point.
It's not a 15-year-old Scorpius, that's for sure.
Right.
You know,
because that's what I liked about the cover. Actually, I liked that it was so different from the series, and I liked that it looked like a play, and that you go, oh, it's a boy, you know, and then later on you're like, oh, actually it was a girl, which was exactly how they felt in the world, because they were like, they're like, wait, Voldemort had a child and it's a daughter? Like, everyone thinks it's going to be a son, and they kept thinking Scorpius or, and there was, like, parts in there where I'm like, is Albus going to be the son of,
Right. I had the same
I was like, I know that's, like, really
thing?
Weird, but, like, I'm getting thoughts that he might be Voldemort's son.
I didn't read reviews about it beforehand.
Neither did I.
I specifically avoided them, but it was hard not to hear, like, the humbugs of people being annoyed, and they're like, they just change things.
Oh.
And in my head, I was like, oh my god, is Albus good? Like, because when I got to that point where they're talking about, like, Voldemort's child, I was like, oh my god, is that gonna be the thing? Because if that had happened, I would have been upset.
That would have been really weird to explain. Like, Harry wasn't, with Ginny when she was pregnant for 9 months.
Yeah,
like
Tom Riddle impregnated her when inside the diary.
Yes.
It's a really long gestation
and
period.
And then it took, like, what is that, like 23
20 years. Plus, while she was pregnant with James and Rose. Yeah. Not Rose, but yeah.
Yeah, with Lily.
She's pumping out, Lily and all them.
So that was really funny to read. Every time I read James and Lily and it was their children, I always thought James and Lily, the parents. I was like, can we name them something else, please?
I mean, yeah.
Because Albus was easy because we never called Albus Dumbledore.
Dumbledore.
Yeah, it's Albus and Dumbledore. So that was easy. I was like, Harry Potter, if you have another child, don't name it after anybody. Okay? Be creative.
Because it makes me, as the reader, very confused.
Yeah. I was like, as a play, it's
especially
fine.
doing voices. Oh my god. The part where they use Polyjuice Potion to turn into the other person, and it was, like, reading it's sort of okay because it'll say Albus/Ron.
Yeah.
But then, like, reading it, I'm like, am I doing the Ron voice here? Okay, he hasn't transformed. Okay, now he's transforming back. Like, it was like, oh, great. What do I have to do here?
That's so funny. You're just like, hold up, time out. So do your review.
I'm a little bit of a rant. Okay.
Let's saddle up, everybody. Let's have your seatbelts on. And
I loved this script. I thought it was an incredibly intimate, emotional, and special interaction that we got to share with these characters. It is a well-written, in a form of dialogue, script. It is a beautiful imagery in the very few imagery that there is. Like, I can see these stages and I can see this production in my head, and I just want to see it even more in real life. Mm-hmm. It was an incredible further exploration of the characters we already knew, and just fleshing them out more and telling more about them without changing our opinion of them. Mm-hmm. Other than Draco, you don't hate or despise or love characters more that we already know. Mm-hmm. The opinion we have of Snape is the same opinion we have of Snape at the end of it. Dumbledore is the same way. So, but all the new characters that are introduced become incredibly appealing and interesting and unique. They are clever and fun and really nice to read. And you imagine them in your head, and now we have these whole new ideas of who these characters are. And I love that. I had an incredibly emotional connection to the plot and to Albus and to his family relationship. And so to me, just on a personal level, I cherish that. I loved reading it out loud. The interaction I had with me and my girlfriend reading it together is just a really fun experience. And the fact that it's in a script allowed me to act and vocalize and become the characters and really get emotional with it more than I ever could with the books. And that was a really fun experience for me as well. I felt like the critiques and the internet comments that this book is getting are nitpicky and they feel as though that the story is somehow theirs and that it shouldn't be changed and that characters shouldn't have flaws and that characters shouldn't grow and develop but I still at the same time don't feel that any of these characters were different than they're not so far different than who they were 20 years ago. The Harry we left at Hogwarts 20 years ago is still the same Harry today. Angry and confused and frustrated at times, but yet deeply passionate, loving, and caring for the people around him. And as as it relates to the other books, it's a different experience. It's a play. You read it as a play, and it's a different thing. And the issues that people have, and the fact that it's different than the books, they don't understand that Harry Potter is now multi-platform, multimedia.
Yeah.
And if you didn't like it as a play, that might not be any problem with the play itself, but with just the format you're reading it in, and you just might not like plays. If they made a Harry Potter poetry slam, I probably wouldn't go to it.
No, I would
because
not.
That's not my thing.
I do not like poetry.
But a play and from a theater background is really, really cool. And so getting to see a play, flesh out characters that I love, explore the themes and motifs that I think Harry Potter has always been about, which is fighting authority and going with what your heart believes and the love you share for the people around you.
Yeah, friendship, definitely.
Because you know this, as my best friend, that my opinions on love are much more deeper and much stronger when it comes to friends than when it comes to family.
Like, yeah.
That I love the people around me because I choose to love them, and they're the people I love and they love me back, not because I'm forced to.
Right.
Just incredible. Loved it. 5 out of 5. I can't wait to read this. And also great progression of darkness. All the Harry Potter books have gotten darker and darker as this goes on, and this is one of the darkest ones. It's not the darkest, I don't think, because not as many people die, but it's still pretty dark and emotional.
So, like I said earlier, that this book wasn't as dark, even though the darkest place is the alternate timeline without Harry Potter, because it was like, how are they going to get out of this? It took away from the realness of the darkness, if you will. You know, like where the sixth one, or the seventh book, you're like, what is gonna happen? And like Ron could die, which he did in the original. And then,
do you remember when we went to go see The Nice Guys? And I was talking about how Shane Black does this thing so well, where you think the movie's wrapping up, but then it's like, oh, another thing happens, and it just keeps going. I felt like way with this, where it was like, oh my god, what are they gonna do now? Oh, okay, they fixed it. Oh my god, I still have 3/4 of this book to go. Yeah.
So did you read the physical? Because you read on your Kindle a lot.
Well, we wanted the physical book because we wanted a physical copy. We have all the there's certain books that you want to have. So yeah, I had the physical thing. So,
I thought the same, because normally I wait for paperback, but I was like, no, I'm gonna have cover.
Also, I knew there were 4 acts, so when I'm on Act 1, Scene 20, I'm like,
I don't think this is the end for some funny reason. Could you imagine if the rest of the pages were just blank?
And I was telling Elizabeth, I'm like, imagine if this was a movie. And they split it up into part 1 and part 2. Yeah. And part 1 ends. And then you gotta wait a year to figure out what happens.
Yeah.
Because it ends with him showing up, and they're like, oh, hello, welcome. Like, the world is...
This is Voldemort Day.
And then it just cuts to black, credits roll.
And they're like, no, and then they even say, they're like, Harry Potter's dead. Why are you talking about him? And you're just like, oh, shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would have not been fun.
Which is strange to me to talk about how literally you go to a play on the one night and then you go to another play the next night.
It's a 2-parter play.
I don't like that. I think that's dumb. I don't like it in my movies. I don't want it in my books. I don't want it in my series. I hate that they're doing that with Game of Thrones.
The story it's long. Like, I don't know the running length, but I feel like each part might be close to 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because reading it, each part took me, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading rather quickly, about 3 hours.
To read it.
To read it out loud. That's why I was like crazy when somebody was like, it took me like 4.5 hours to read. And I was like, it took me 6 hours to read it out loud.
Yeah.
Well, actually, probably more than that. Probably like...
Well, to read out loud is slower. And especially if you're acting the lines, that's going to be slower than someone just reading.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's quick.
Yeah.
It's a quick read.
Yeah.
You can do it in a couple hours easily. It looks bigger because of the spacing and the font. Like if I went over to my boxes and I grabbed like the scripts that I have for like Anatomy of Grey, Radium Girls, Triangle Fact. If I grabbed any of those scripts and I was just like, they're tiny little books.
Absolutely.
Scripts are short because
I loved
it's a
the texture of this book. I love that it felt like the series. Like,
yeah, I mean, they put a lot of work and effort into making it exactly
like when you take that cover off and it's like not a play anymore, it looks like it fits in with the series.
It's got the binding. And
yeah,
it's got its
the binding
color
and
the font and the.
And then even I mean, it even has the Levine books, which I so associate with Harry Potter. That little symbol,
and the two color,
Yeah. All it needs is that one artist's
Yeah, it doesn't have the original artwork.
And then I would be like, yeah. So anyway, I would probably feel different if I saw it, but I just think it's interesting that we're getting into this world now where a story takes two parts, and it's like, where does the line end? But anyway. I forgot where I was going with this. That always upsets me. I totally forgot where I was going with this.
Star Wars Episode 9, Part 1.
I would be so upset if they do that. And I know they're going to. And it really,
could rant
about
it.
They will, Riley. This is what they do.
Because then it would just be Episode 9 and Episode 10.
You know what they did? They did Hobbit Part 1, Hobbit Part 2, Hobbit Part 3. Where does it end, Riley? God, I don't like it.
They wanted to make Lord of the Rings one movie.
Yeah,
when the studio
that
first
doesn't
was
make
gonna make
sense.
It, they wanted to make the entirety of Lord of the Rings in one movie.
There's 3 books. Like, let's keep the ratio of 1v1. That's totally off topic.
I just think it's a really long play. They had a story to tell, and that's the other thing. I feel, and this is my opinion about films too, is you should never make a film unless you have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
And this play has something to say, and it just happens to be 6 hours long.
Yeah.
And it's like
I could take it back
if I
watch
really
it.
hard to sit through at 6 hours.
Absolutely.
Like,
and that's
even
what
the
I was
best
curious
ones in the world.
I was wondering how long each part was, because then that would make more sense.
Yeah.
And I think the play has.
I'm totally estimating. I don't know how long each part is.
Yeah.
I'm just that it took Elizabeth and I almost 7 hours
to read it.
Yeah, about 6 to 7 hours to just sit down and me read it out loud to her.
Yeah, so it has to be around that time.
A lot faster than Harry Potter took.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, each chapter would be 30 minutes.
That's how long I take to read it normally. It's like it takes me an hour to finish a chapter of Harry Potter.
I think we're learning from this book club that you and I read at very different speeds.
Oh, I'm a very slow reader.
You should be concerned, because whatever book we choose next, I'm going to just...
I'm very concerned. Yeah. The book you want to choose is 700 pages. I'm like, Riley, I'm not going to get that done in a month.
All right. Well, let's get to your review real quick.
So overall, I loved this book tremendous amount. It totally teleported me to the time when I was obsessed with Harry Potter. It totally just brought me back to that time. And I was so excited, against my original thoughts, which I thought this was a really dumb idea, to sell the script, not the play. But, reading it, I was like, this is great. I love reading this. It's so exciting to get an 8th part, quote unquote, even though people don't like that saying because it's so different.
It's part 8.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a continuation.
There's a huge jump in time, but it doesn't make it any more, any less part 8.
Yeah. I will always have the Harry Potter series, and then this is the play. It's not going to be combined for me.
Uh-huh.
But regardless, it was just such a fun read. It was really quick, which I enjoyed as a slow reader. And it, brought back that feeling of, I can't wait to read and see what happens next. Mm-hmm. I just, that feeling, which... a couple other books did, The Hunger Games did that for me. I was right. I can't, I was reading that book at stoplights because I was I really wanted to, just read it. And so it was really fun to get back into that. And I was like, oh, that's right. This is why I love reading, mm-hmm. because of this high that I get from this right now. And so it was thoroughly enjoyable, which is why I gave it a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads.
Absolutely. And I mean, if listeners and people out there on the internet disagree with us, I mean, that's totally fine.
Absolutely.
Because like all good art, it's incredibly subjective.
Yeah.
And I've seen reviews on this book that are negative and I don't get upset with.
Absolutely. Me too. There was a few of them that I'm like, oh yeah, I understand that.
But I have seen reviews of this book that are just nitpicky and stupid. And it's like you are just
You're just a bitter old person and you need a mom who loves you very, very badly.
Mm-hmm.
To quote Hook.
But yeah, no. And I'm glad because you and I didn't talk about this at all before.
No,
right
we didn't.
This is the first time we've talked about this book together.
Which is why this episode is so long.
Yeah.
It's almost 2
how
hours.
long is it?
It's 2 hours almost.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we're at an hour and 56 minutes.
No wonder I was running out of space. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's the problem. We've just said that this is 2 hours long, but I'm going to edit it down to 35 minutes.
You are?
I mean,
this is such good content.
No one's going to sit through a 2-hour podcast.
Well, MuggleCast was an hour and a half.
Yeah, but they already have a following. We'll figure it out.
They didn't have a following in the beginning. Well, I guess MuggleNet was their following. But
speaking of following, I want to thank everybody who's listening to this for joining us for this very first inaugural episode of Fiction Fetish.
Yay!
If you want to continue the discussion with us, and I wholeheartedly think that you should,
absolutely.
We have a Goodreads book club group that you can join. Your link is on the screen or in the description of whatever you're viewing this platform on. It's there. You can also find us at our Twitters. I'm at Riley Scott Tech.
And I am at the Bri T.
And the Twitter for the group for our YouTube channel is We Stay Indoors, at We Stay Indoors. But yeah, feel free to comment and tell us how we're wrong and how the book is actually terrible.
I would love to read those.
And we'll make sure to comment and join in the discussion too.
Do we want to mention what our next book is?
Yes. So we, now that this is over, on September 1st, we will be wrapping up and recording our next podcast.
Not with the book you chose. It's not going to be September 1st.
Sometime in September, we will be recording and doing our next book club. And you can find information, again, on our Goodreads page. But we will be reading the wonderful Patrick Rothfuss book series, The King Killer Chronicles. The first book of which is The Name of the Wind. Correct?
I believe so. Or is it The Name in the Wind?
The Name of the Wind.
Name of the Wind.
Yeah,
okay.
Name of the Wind. So we'll be reading The Name of the Wind, first book, The King Killer Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss, published in 2007, I believe. So yeah, we're very excited about it. And please feel free to read along. If you have read it before, please avoid spoilers in any of the comments. And if you haven't, please feel free to read along with us and then join us for the discussion online. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next month.